The idea of a best case scenario Khalil Mack going to this Chargers team is certainly very exciting. You know, him opposite Joey Bosa, if he still is what we have seen him be, that would be fantastic and very exciting. My main issue with this move, and it's not necessarily me saying I think it's not going to work, but just that I could see a scenario where it doesn't work. And I think that I do have some potential concerns, especially when you look into some of the numbers about this stuff. So for example, right here, let's look at pressures. Pressures tend to be a great stat to use for pass rushers because they very much correlate year in and year out. Sacks can vary, pressures do vary a little bit, but they tend to not vary as much. How many pressures you generate tends to be how good you are. So you see in 2019, he had 45 pressures. In 2020, it dropped to 31, despite the fact that he had about a little over 35 more snaps in 2020 than he did in 2019. And then in 2021, last year, he only had 9 pressures, which if he played all year, that's supposed to be all year, not all years, then he would have had 27 total pressures. So the difference between 45 pressures and 31 or 27 is pretty dramatic. As you see at the bottom section of your screen, 43 players had at least 27 pressures last year, 30 players had at least 31 pressures last year, but only 6 had at least 45 pressures. So the difference between 45 and 27 is about the difference between being a elite pass rusher versus being a good number 2 option. However, listen, having bad years can happen, or having down years statistically can happen, but what about like tape? Well, let's ask the guys at PFF what they think. This is Mack's total PFF grades for last year, and if you look at just the defense in general, it was very good in 2019 and even in 2020, so that's maybe reason to be optimistic about, hey, okay, the numbers were down in 2020, but the tape was actually pretty good, so maybe that's just, luck. There is an element of luck for pressures. Maybe that's what happened there. Although in 2021, we definitely did see a drop off in not just production, but also in PFF grades. So if the tape's not looking as good and the numbers aren't looking as good, that is, at least again, it's reason to be concerned. Now, if you look at the contract itself, it's a little surprising how it works out. So the contract details have been very confusing, and they've been reported on wrong in several places, one of which is the Jackson Kruger Sports YouTube channel. I made a video earlier where I said the wrong thing. I actually deleted that video because I said the wrong thing. I don't want to have misinformation out there that I'm causing, so part of why I'm making a new video is to get all the correct data here, because Rappaport reported that the Chargers were taking on all of Mack's contract, which isn't exactly true because there's already some money that the Bears have already paid, so they're not taking on that part of the contract. So this is what they're actually taking on as of right now. The cap number for 2022 is pretty light. It's only $8.7 million. But that being said, you see the massive cap number the next 2 years at $27 million each, and some people might say, well, hey, okay, either he is elite and you'll pay him that much, or he's not elite and you don't have to pay him that much. So either way, because you can just cut him, right? Isn't there going to be low risk here? Well, not exactly. I mean, you're still going to have $9 million in dead money if you do cut him. So next year, your choices will be to either get rid of him and eat the $9 million in dead cap, which isn't ideal. Pay him $27 million a year, which that's what TJ Watt is making, right? And he just set the market. So that's like, what's largely considered too high for even the elite of the elite pass rushers for many people. Or you can just do a restructure, but even if you're doing a restructure, you're still going to have to pay some of that money in the future. So that's the option that I'm sure will end up getting made, but it's still a little bit eye-raising, and it's not quite as simple as this is a true no-risk, high-reward move. No, there is some risk involved. And also, I went back and watched his tape myself. I watched his entire last season, which was not that long because, again, we're dealing with small sample size here. And if you're a Chargers fan, that's just your hope, is that the small sample size was why things weren't as good. But the tape wasn't as good. Like, a lot of his wins were kind of fluky. Something like this, where it's going to be a rollout from Baker Mayfield. I have circled Khalil Mack, and watch what happens. As you see, the bootleg kind of goes to Mack. Mack does a good job of reading the play and going over and making a tackle, but he gets credit for a sack this way, whereas it's not like he's just beating the edge rusher in a perfect one-on-one fashion. That's not what's happening, and that's kind of what you pay an edge rusher to do is to beat a tackle in a true one-on-one, which he just didn't do that much last year. Also going over to the running game, because keep in mind, I think that's a big reason why the Chargers are adding Mack, the idea of he's not just an elite pass rusher, but he's an elite run defender, but his PFF run grade actually dropped 10 points lower than his PFF pass rush grade did. It was a 64 run defense grade, which is only okay. The pass rush grade was 74, which was still like solid. But anyways, on this play, Mack is getting double teamed here, so maybe it's unfair to criticize him for this play, but it's also getting double teamed by 2 tight ends. But as you see, Mack does get pretty easily taken out of this play, and the other tight end is able to still get to the second level and make a block on a linebacker. That was part of why Kareem Hunt was able to get into the end zone for a touchdown on that play. So this stuff happened, and there were some negatives on tape. Now, I want to be very clear. In the short term, this still probably helps the Chargers. It's hard to argue the contrary. I mean, in fact, I think it definitely helps the Chargers, at least to some degree. And like going over here, there was some legitimate good on tape, specifically with twist. So maybe he wasn't beating tackles in a traditional sense, but he was still getting pressure through twist and stunts, which is something that he, has always been very good at because of his great athleticism, and you'll see it on this play. Watch how, I'm not going to set up the whole thing, but just watch how when he goes to the inside, he's able to hurry up and get some pressure there. Now, he actually got a flag for roughing the passer on that one because he hit the helmet, but again, that happens. That's the life of being an edge rusher. It was a good job of being able to get to the spot quickly and using his athleticism, which is something I do think the Chargers will probably want to see him use from time to time. Something like this is another example of a very similar thing. It's again going to be kind of the same concept. I've circled Khalil Mack, and watch what happens. Look, as you see, Mack is going to then get over the middle, and he is going to be able to get the sack this time. So it's good stuff. It's, again, not what I would want to pay edge rusher number one, a guy number one edge rusher money for. So that's my only real concern about this. You also did give up a second round pick, so you're giving up capital and you're giving up cap space, which the cap space doesn't matter as much, but the actual money does because teams are only going to spend X amount of money on their players. So yeah, I have some concerns about this move. At the end of the day, I think it makes the Chargers better. I just think there's moves they could have made with the resources they had to make themselves even more better. That's kind of the way I view this stuff, where I think that there were plenty of good pass rushers available on the market who were less of a risk than Khalil Mack and wouldn't have cost you a second-round pick. I think there's absolutely a world where Khalil Mack just had a down year before getting hurt, and it was a small sample size, and he's goes right back to being this elite pass rusher, and then great, you have an elite pass rusher, you're good, and things are going to be awesome. That's a possibility. I just think for me personally, I would have probably rather gone after a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, for example, who can be a monster at stopping the run, which you really want. He can be someone who can blow things up so Joey Bosa can make the play. He might not get as many sacks himself, but won't cost as much money and wouldn't cost any draft capital as well. And again, there's plenty of guys who are on the market, like Zadarius Smith, Randy Gregory, Chandler Jones, Von Miller, just to name a few, who met the open market and could have, I think, done at least, if not more, at least close to as much, and really, I think would have been a safer option that would have cost you a lot less resources. That's my mindset. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.